morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our audience, no matter where you are in the world. Warm welcome to our Web3 Disruptors Week. Right now, let's come to our third session of today. That is our fireside chat with Thu Vays. Thu Vays is a very renowned crypto analyst, Bitcoin analyst to be more particular. Today, our topic is the currency in Web3. Before we start to go to the Q&A session, I would like to take some minutes to introduce Thu. Thu has worked on Wall Street for 10 years prior to discovering Bitcoin. Since then, he has been educating people on his YouTube channel about the importance of this unique financial technology. Thu has been featured in several documentaries like Magic Money, Bitcoin Beyond the Bubble, and several media appearances, media like CNBC, RT, and more. So, warm welcome, Thu. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Jenny.
Great to have you, Thu. I have long been expecting to talk with you, and thank you for making my dream come true today. Okay. Before my first question is, can you briefly introduce about your history with Bitcoin crypto to our audience?
Sure. I first heard about Bitcoin in very early 2011 when WikiLeaks was shut down from being able to accept donations by Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal. And it did show me that, well, Bitcoin has a real use case in being censorship-resistant value transfer. That remains one of its biggest use cases today. We've seen this use case pop up time and time again. It happened a little bit later with Silk Road when people were buying whatever they wanted from Silk Road. We saw the Greek banking shut down. People couldn't access their money. We're witnessing it more recently with Canadian truckers being denied banking because of their views on politics. We saw it with Russia when Russia got kicked off from the SWIFT system due to sanctions. But that property, when I first heard about it, was interesting, but it wasn't interesting enough to really scare me out of the current financial system and into Bitcoin. That happened in 2013. There's a whole other property of Bitcoin that people very underestimate. And that is the fact that Bitcoin is the first unconfiscatable asset in human history. It is very different than transferring it without a middleman. It is the fact that if you acquire Bitcoin and you acquire it in a certain way and you protect it in a certain way, then that Bitcoin becomes completely unconfiscatable. I watched in 2013 the Cyprus banking confiscation, where the government just took 50% of people's money. And that actually got me scared. Wait a minute. How does a developed country in the European Union just take away people's money out of their bank account? And that's when I started seriously investigating Bitcoin. And it's true. Bitcoin is the first unconfiscatable asset in human history. We witnessed it again more recently with the sanctions on Russia. Governments in the West just decided to confiscate the wealth of Russian businessmen. They call them oligarchs. They took away their yachts. They took away their apartments. But the one thing they can never take away is your Bitcoin. Whether that's good or bad is certainly debatable, but the technology is now there that you can hold something of value that no one can just take away because they disagree with your views and opinions.
Thank you, Thu. Wow, definitely you have been participating since very early in Bitcoin. Right now, there are lots of discussions since Web3. Many people say that it is likely to be the unstoppable future. currency is play a central part in any society, in any countries. May I ask what kind of currencies would people use in the Web3 era? We know that right now we have lots of money in the market. We have several fiat money, and we have lots of crypto, and also we have some CBDC. So do you think that in Web3 era, what kind of currency would we use? Would it be Bitcoin or a certain type of crypto, or would it be a mixture of others? What's your idea on this?
That's a really good question. And right now, we are all living in a world with many fiat currencies. There's probably about 180 countries in the world, and I think there's probably about 120 currencies. Many of the countries that don't use their own currency use either the euro or the US dollar. Those are generally the two global currencies that people use. Even in Hong Kong, for example, they don't use the Chinese currency, they use the dollar. They have a currency pegged to the dollar in Hong Kong. So what happens in Web3? Well, at the moment, most Web3 projects are being built as blockchains. And one of the easiest ways to make a blockchain is to have a blockchain with its own token. It provides a way to finance your project by basically creating your own money. I am not a big fan of this practice. I believe that in the future, in the free market, without force, without regulation, I believe that in a free market, we will all gravitate to the single blockchain that is the most immutable and the most secure. Today, that blockchain is clearly Bitcoin, and I believe it will remain to be Bitcoin. So while there are many Web3 platforms that are being built out, and they have a token, and that token would rise in value as that Web3 project starts to get popular. But there is almost nothing a Web3 project can build that can't be copied over to another Web3 project. And because of that, it is very difficult for Web3 projects to actually innovate. Because if they are following this, non-regulatory path where there is no enforcement, there's also no enforcement of your patents. It is very difficult to enforce a patent in this crypto world. A couple of people have tried, but have not seen anybody succeed. So because of that, there is nothing that a Web3 project can create that would be able to force people to use it. And that means we're either going to have so many Web3 projects, or everyone is going to culminate onto one. And when there is that one, what is the currency inside that project? At the end of the day, I think people want simplicity and people want stability and reliability. So I envision a world where something like the movie Ready Player One, where there really is this one virtual reality world. And to me, Web3 eventually boils down to a virtual reality world. There's either a few of them with one layer that they can all interact with, but probably there's going to be one virtual reality world that we all participate in, just like we have one internet that we all do this on. Yes, there is Zoom and there are other video streaming platforms, and we can choose which video streaming platform we use, but we're still on the same internet, because otherwise it will be impossible for us to communicate across different video messengers. So I do think that at the end, there will be only one currency in Web3, and that currency is going to be Bitcoin. There might be other in-game currencies, but there will always be an option to exchange your in-game currency for Bitcoin. And the first Web3 project to properly give their users the ability to utilize Bitcoin, that project will probably be the winner. But it's very, very challenging to build this project, because where is the money going to come from to build it? you can't create Bitcoin out of thin air, but you can create other tokens out of thin air. That's how Ethereum started. That's how Cardano started. That's how all of these other crypto, Solana, they all create the token first, get a bunch of money, and then start building something. Now, 99% of the time, it never gets built, and it turns out to be an outright scam. And 1 or 3% of the time, something gets built. But just because something got built doesn't mean it's going to be successful long term. And as we saw with Celsius, for example, they were promoting how they're the most capitalized company in the space because they have $2 billion in reserves. But those $2 billion were in their own token. And if there is a panic on your token and the price of token trends towards zero, you have no more money and your company collapses. So I think that Bitcoin is going to be the one currency that every Web3 project will eventually have to integrate. And then we will see who the winner is. But I fully expect Bitcoin to be the currency of not only Web3, but our current live in-person interaction world.
Thank you, Tom. If you think that Bitcoin is the only currency in Web3, perhaps we need to discuss how are the fiats? Would you think that Bitcoin will replace the fiats?
Yes, I do think eventually Bitcoin will be the world currency that everybody uses. It'll still take a while. It'll still take another decade. And Web3 is still a long time away. These virtual reality interactions, we're still a long time away from that, but that is where technology is going to go. And Bitcoin makes a very easy transition into Web3. So I would advise a lot of these Web3 companies not to even try to integrate their own currency into it. You're better off creating an equity. You're better off creating a security of the company, where as your Web3 project succeeds, you have an equity token where people get to participate financially the way that securities go today, like Facebook and Twitter, they have stock. And as the company does well, the company stock rises. So that's what I advise Web3 companies to do, and just integrate Bitcoin as the currency there. But a lot of companies just want to integrate their own currency because they have more control. Just like governments don't want to move to Bitcoin. They want to continue using their own currencies because they can control money creation and they can control how people spend the money. There's no different than in Web3. The only reason a Web3 company would integrate their own currency is because they actually want control of the people inside Web3. They want control of that currency creation, and they want control of how people spend that money. It is no different than our traditional world. But people want freedom. People want to spend their money in any way they like. And this is why eventually freedom wins. Freedom always wins. This is why we don't have a one world government. This is why capitalism tends to win. This is why, Russia collapsed after 70 years. China couldn't maintain the communist way of life. It is very difficult to maintain full control of people. And I'm hoping that trend continues and people want to be free. And there is no greater freedom than the ability to spend your wealth and store your wealth in any way you choose. And Bitcoin is the only asset to grant people that freedom because nobody controls it.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. My next question is, just earlier this month, you were warning another Bitcoin collapse. So do you still think the same? What's your prediction on where the Bitcoin price will likely to go next?
Wow. So I did my own video right before I got on this Fireside chat. And I think the next 24 to 36 hours are very critical for Bitcoin. I really liked how Bitcoin broke out above 22,000 and made it to 24,000. but now Bitcoin needs to stay above 22,000. We have pulled back to 22,000. This is basically as low as I'm willing to see Bitcoin before assuming significantly lower prices are likely to happen again. So if in the next 36 hours, we are able to stay above 22,000 and push back up towards 23, 24, I would have a lot of confidence that last month's low price of 17,500 will never be seen again. But if Bitcoin starts to fall back down towards 20,000 in the next few days, I would then anticipate a move lower than that $17,500. So Bitcoin is in a very, very critical position right now. I've been saying for months that I expected Bitcoin price to bottom this summer, and we still have a month and a half to go of summer. And it's very hard to say whether that low is in or not. I say 60% chance the low at 17.5 is there. But if we start falling back to 20,000, then I'm going to go back to 50-50 or even a greater than 50% chance we're going to go lower. But sometime this summer, we will finally get that bottom if it hasn't happened yet.
Thank you, Tom, for your prediction. I have one more question before we go. After when I read your bio, I feel very impressed by this. You have been explaining to the world about the importance of Bitcoin, this financial technology, this unique financial technology. You have huge background. You have lots of Wall Street financial background. So can you explain to us more to why you think that Bitcoin is a very unique financial technology? I think for people who have been in this field for several years, we have some thoughts about this too. Maybe as right now, Web3 is a huge topic, and many people from other industries looking at what is happening in blockchain. What is Bitcoin? So can you share your idea? Explain more about this.
Sure. So look, I'll be the first to admit, Bitcoin isn't the fastest means of transferring data. There are things that are faster. It's not the cheapest. Transactions still cost a little bit, and at certain times they cost a lot more. It's not the most private. Bitcoin transactions are very publicly visible on the Bitcoin blockchain. But what makes Bitcoin unique is that it is decentralized. It is the most decentralized thing in the world. It is the most decentralized system in the world. This was achieved in several parts. One of them is when Satoshi released Bitcoin, neither he nor anyone else expected it to succeed. He also left the project very early to allow it to develop in this leaderless environment. The way Bitcoin grew up, Bitcoin's first 2 years, you cannot replicate Bitcoin's first 2 years. It is actually impossible. So many people think that they can create a better decentralized project. You can't. The whole concept of you creating a decentralized project automatically removes it from having the possibility of being created. Bitcoin is the first token where people have thrown away thousands of these tokens. People could have tens of millions of dollars right now if they understood how valuable those tokens were in the beginning. That doesn't happen with any other project. Any other project, everyone thinks that it can be the next Bitcoin, and they immediately start investing in that token in order to make money. The way Bitcoin grew up is you can't replicate that. And that's what makes Bitcoin decentralized. And even today, it is very difficult to make a change to the Bitcoin code. There are true believers in Bitcoin that will not let any kind of code get in. If we disagree with the code, we will run our nodes in order to prevent code changes. The mining network uses up a lot of energy that makes it very difficult to corrupt Bitcoin by spending more money. Proof of work is the innovation. The way Bitcoin evolved, you just can't replicate that. Again, this is why a capitalist system will always be better than a communist system, because in a communist system, someone in charge has to oversee each stage of production and supply chain. But in a capitalist system, it creates incentives where a single person doesn't have to oversee everything. So this is why capitalist systems eventually win. And this is why proof of work is the best form of blockchain over proof of stake. So it's just the decentralized nature of Bitcoin gives these checks and balances between miners, node operators, and coders. And if you are unable to run a node in your blockchain, if you cannot validate the transactions, if you do not have a say in what code changes take place on your blockchain by running your own node, which should be free to do and or very, very cheap to do, your blockchain is just not decentralized. And 99% of these other blockchains, you can't run a node. It is very hard to run a node in Ethereum, which is why I believe it's not a decentralized system.
Thank you. Thank you. So do you mean that 99% of other blockchains are not decentralized, not
Correct.
truly decentralized, right? Thank you. So if you do you have more thoughts to add before we go about what's your suggestion to the people who want to get into the Web3 field? What is your suggestion to them?
Sure. Look, I don't want to sound too hypocritical, but you have to understand the technology and you have to be in it for the technology. Those that get involved in any of these crypto projects, whether it's Web3, whether it's blockchains, whether it's NFTs, if your main motivation is getting rich and making money, you might get rich and make money, but most people don't. Most people end up losing more money because luck eventually runs out. You really do have to be in it for the technology, and you have to understand the technology, and you have to help build the technology. And if you are building the right technology, then having that value, having that token can help. But everyone that got into this because they thought that the token would just go up in value and then they would be rich, have not had the best experience. And the same thing applies to Bitcoin. Those that understood Bitcoin and got into it at a bad price, at a high price, they were okay because they understood why they got into Bitcoin, and they were able to hold that Bitcoin token through its downswings because it just got a little too expensive. But many other projects, once the token starts going down, it kills the project. Bitcoin, that won't happen. The value of the token will not kill Bitcoin because there are these people, like myself included, that need Bitcoin, the network, to survive because it's the only way to give people freedom in how they spend their money. So just be very, very careful and be very cautious on everything that someone will tell you because there is this space is full of so many promises and most of them fall short.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. Really appreciate your sharing. And let's keep in touch. Look forward to more of your insights in future. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.